You think saving a stranger makes you a hero? Dean Margaret Caldwell, dripping in diamonds, ripped Emma's scholarship papers in half and threw them at her. "You people don't belong here," she shouted. "Go back to where you came from." Emma, 19, still in blood-stained scrubs, could barely breathe. But 3 days later, a helicopter landed in her apartment yard, and the woman she saved stepped out, billionaire, furious, and ready to rewrite everything Emma thought she knew about justice. Before we dive in, we'd love to know, what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our amazing videos. Emma Bradley's alarm screamed through the tiny apartment, jarring her awake at exactly 7:23 a.m. Her heart raced before she even opened her eyes. Today was her Nursing 401 final exam, the one she had been preparing for months. Late entry wasn't allowed, and every single point counted toward her scholarship. She bolted upright, throwing off her thin blanket. Her uniform from yesterday's clinicals still smelled faintly of antiseptic and sweat. Laundry was a luxury she couldn't afford this week, not after paying tuition and buying the medical supplies she couldn't borrow. Emma shoved the scrubs onto her body, grabbed her worn backpack, and noticed the photo on her desk. Her 9-year-old self with her mother, Sarah, smiling in a park. Her mother had died from pneumonia years ago because her family couldn't afford the hospital bills. Emma's throat tightened. "I'm going to make you proud today, Mama," she whispered. The apartment was small and bare, but it smelled faintly of coffee. She grabbed her keys and ran toward the door, the November cold biting her cheeks as she stepped onto the crowded streets of Market Street. Commuters rushed past her, smartphones in hand, coffee in the other, everyone focused on their own lives. Emma's bus stop was 2 blocks away. She spotted Route 21 approaching in the distance, its brakes squealing as it slowed to pick up passengers. She sprinted, backpack bouncing against her shoulders, every step echoing her panic. And then she saw her. A young woman, maybe 20-something, collapsed on the sidewalk, crying, shaking, barely able to move. Her face was streaked with mascara, her expensive coat dirtied and torn. Something inside Emma stopped her feet. She could have ignored it. She could have boarded the bus and raced to the exam, but she couldn't. Emma dropped her backpack and knelt beside the stranger. "Are you okay? What happened?" she asked. Her voice trembled, but she didn't care about the time or the bus. The woman's lips quivered as she tried to speak, but tears choked her words. A small crowd had gathered. Some people walked past, shaking their heads. Some whispered. Emma didn't notice. She held the woman's hand and assessed her condition. She quickly realized the stranger was in shock, likely fainted from fear or stress. Emma unzipped her own backpack, pulled out a water bottle, and helped the woman sip carefully. Minutes felt like hours. Emma's watch ticked towards 7:45 a.m. Her exam had started 20 minutes ago, but she stayed, comforting the stranger. "It's going to be okay," she said softly, guiding her to a nearby bench. The woman's shaking lessened as she slowly regained composure. Finally, the stranger looked at Emma, her voice hoarse. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you," she whispered. Emma smiled, brushing her own hair from her face. "Just take deep breaths. You're safe now." The bus had gone. Emma's heart sank. She knew she had missed her final exam. Her scholarship, her grades, all potentially at risk. She had sacrificed everything in that moment to help someone she didn't even know. And yet, there was a strange sense of calm in her chest. She had done the right thing. By the time she arrived at the university, late entry was no longer an option. Security had already barred the doors to the lecture hall. Emma's stomach twisted as she approached Dean Margaret Caldwell's office. The dean was infamous for her ruthlessness and obsession with rules. Today, Emma was about to find out just how cruel it could get. The door swung open before she could knock. Dean Caldwell stood there. In a designer white suit, diamonds sparkling on her wrists and neck, her expression colder than the November air. Emma's scholarship folder was on the desk, but the dean's eyes were blazing. "You're late," Caldwell said, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Explain yourself." Emma swallowed, trying to steady her voice. I was helping someone.
A woman collapsed on the street. I couldn't just leave her. The dean's lips curled into a sneer. You think saving a stranger makes you a hero? She grabbed Emma's folder, ripped the papers in half, and tossed them on the floor. You people don't belong here. You skip exams, beg for handouts, and cry when consequences come. Get out of my office. Get out of my school. Emma felt the air leave her lungs. Her scholarship, 4 years of perfect grades, straight A's, was destroyed in seconds. Her legs felt like they were made of lead as she stood there, tears welling up in her eyes. Security cleared the room, leaving her standing alone, humiliated, broken. For a moment the world seemed to stop. Emma could barely breathe, but deep inside she clenched her fists. She might have lost everything in that office, but she hadn't lost her heart, her courage, or her soul. She had done what she knew was right. And somewhere, far from the dean's icy office, a chain of events had already begun, a chain that would bring the woman Emma saved back into her life in a way no one could have predicted. 3 days later, everything Emma thought she knew about justice, power, and fate was about to change.
Emma stumbled out of Dean Caldwell's office, the echo of the door slamming behind her, ringing in her ears. The hallway felt colder than the November morning outside. Students passed by, some sneering, some whispering. Emma's scholarship, her grades, her future, it all felt like it had been ripped away in seconds. The torn pages of her folder replayed in her mind like a cruel reminder of injustice. Her heart pounded, but not from the rush of exertion. It was the weight of humiliation, the sense that her entire life's work had been dismissed in a single, merciless gesture. She had spent years working, studying, sacrificing, and yet it seemed none of that mattered. Outside, the campus felt indifferent. The autumn wind swept fallen leaves across the walkways, ignoring her despair. Emma walked aimlessly, clutching her backpack, wishing she could disappear. Tears blurred her vision, but she wiped them away fiercely. She refused to cry in public, refused to give Dean Caldwell the satisfaction of seeing her broken. By the time Emma reached her apartment, she was shaking, not from cold, but from anger and helplessness. She had saved a life, shown compassion, risked missing the most important exam of her career. And what had she been rewarded with? Public humiliation, a destroyed scholarship, and the kind of verbal abuse she had never imagined facing at a prestigious university. Emma collapsed under her couch, burying her face in her hands. She thought of her mother again, Sarah, who had died because her family couldn't afford care. "Mama, I tried to do the right thing," Emma whispered through her tears. But even saying it out loud didn't lessen the sting of betrayal. Her phone buzzed. A few messages from classmates popped up, some sympathetic, some cruel. "You really think playing hero was worth it?" one text read. Emma ignored it. Another simply said, "Dean Caldwell is ruthless. Good luck recovering." She stared at the screen, numb. She didn't know if she wanted sympathy, advice, or just someone to acknowledge the injustice she had suffered. That night, sleep was impossible. Emma lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the morning over and over. She remembered the woman on the street, the stranger whose life she had saved. She had been terrified, crying, desperate, and Emma had done what anyone with a heart would have done. She hadn't hesitated. And yet, the universe had twisted that act of kindness into something that had nearly destroyed her life. By the next morning, Emma had barely eaten, barely slept. She had withdrawn into herself, avoiding phone calls and messages. Her apartment felt smaller than ever, the walls closing in as memories of the dean's cruelty replayed in her mind. She tried to focus on the one thing she could control, her skills as a nurse, but even that felt tainted by the events of yesterday. And then, a knock at the door. Emma froze. Visitors were rare at this hour. Hesitant, she approached and peeked through the peephole. Outside stood a woman, impeccably dressed, her presence commanding attention even from a distance.
Emma's heart skipped. There was something familiar about her face, something she couldn't place immediately. She smiled, but it wasn't a casual smile. It was knowing, powerful, intentional. She held out her hand. "Emma Gradley?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. "I believe you saved my life." Emma's mind raced. The woman's memory clicked. She was the stranger from the street, the one Emma had helped just before her exam. Emma's chest tightened. "Yes," she whispered, unsure why her voice shook. I just— "Shh," she said, cutting her off gently. "You did more than anyone would have, and now it's my turn." Emma stepped back, confused. "I don't understand." The woman's gaze was steady, almost intimidating. "3 days ago, you risked everything for me. You missed your exam, put yourself in jeopardy, and still cared for a stranger. That kind of courage doesn't go unnoticed. Not in my world." Emma's stomach dropped. "Your world?" The woman's lips curved into a slight smile. "Yes. I'm here to ensure that no one ever takes advantage of your kindness, that no one destroys your future for doing what's right." Emma's mind whirled. She had suffered humiliation, anger, and despair. And now someone had arrived, someone with power, someone ready to tip the scales back in her favor. She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. Her life, the way she thought about justice and fate, would never be the same. Outside, the sun rose higher, casting golden light into Emma's small apartment. She looked at the woman standing at her door, her heart pounding, her mind filled with anticipation and disbelief. The events of the past 3 days had led to this moment, a moment that promised revenge, redemption, and an unimaginable twist of fate. She didn't know it yet, but the woman she had helped would soon change everything.
Emma's hands trembled as she stepped aside, letting the woman into her apartment. Her mind raced, trying to process what was happening. The woman's presence alone radiated power, every movement deliberate, every glance commanding. She carried an air of authority that demanded respect, even in the quiet of Emma's modest living space. "I need you to sit," the woman said, pointing toward the couch. Her tone was calm but firm. Emma obeyed, sinking into the cushions as though the weight of the last 3 days had finally caught up with her. The woman sat opposite her, pulling a sleek tablet from her designer bag. "Emma Bradley," she began, her voice smooth yet sharp. "My name is Celeste Montgomery. 3 days ago, you did something extraordinary. You saved me when I was vulnerable, terrified, and completely alone. Most people would have ignored me. Most people would have walked past, busy with their own lives. But not you." Emma's throat tightened. I didn't do anything special. I just—" Celeste held up a hand, stopping her. "You don't get it. Not everyone has the courage to act selflessly when the world is against them, and especially not in your position. Students like you are taught to obey, to follow rules, to look out only for themselves. You broke that cycle." Emma swallowed hard, feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. But what can you do?" she whispered, still unsure of why this billionaire stranger was in her tiny apartment. Celeste's gaze hardened. "The people who humiliated you, the dean, the administrators, those who tried to destroy your scholarship, they won't know what hit them. I make sure that acts of courage like yours are rewarded, and that cruelty like theirs doesn't go unpunished." Emma's stomach dropped. You're going to help me?" Celeste leaned back, a confident smile touching her lips. "I'm going to make sure justice is served. And I promise you, Emma, you will never be treated like a powerless student again." At that moment, a deep rumble shook the air. Emma looked toward the window and froze. Outside, a helicopter descended slowly into her small yard, its blades slicing through the morning light. Dust and leaves swirled around it like a small storm, and the sound of its engines filled the apartment. Celeste rose from her seat, calm as ever, and said simply, "Let's go." Emma's eyes widened. We're going in that? Where?"
Celeste ignored the question. "You'll see soon enough. But first, you need to understand the stakes. The people who hurt you, Dean Caldwell and her cronies, believe they are untouchable. They think they can humiliate anyone they choose without consequences. But they don't know me, Emma, and they certainly don't know you." The wind from the helicopter whipped through the open door as Emma followed Celeste outside. The moment she stepped onto the landing pad in her small backyard, the enormity of the situation hit her. She was about to board a helicopter with a woman she barely knew, someone she had saved out of sheer instinct, someone who now had the power to destroy her enemies and protect her. As they lifted off, Emma looked down at her apartment shrinking below her. The streets she had raced through just days ago seemed so distant now. She couldn't help but think of her mother, of the sacrifices that had led her to this point, and for the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope, a spark of belief that doing the right thing, even when it costs everything, can lead to unimaginable rewards. Celeste turned to her, eyes sharp and unwavering. "By the end of today, Emma, your life will never be the same. You'll see firsthand that courage is always noticed and cruelty always punished." Emma nodded, heart racing, mind spinning. The helicopter climbed higher into the crisp morning sky, and below, the campus where she had been humiliated shrank into the distance. Soon the world would witness the unpredictable consequences of a single act of kindness, and Emma knew, deep down, that the storm of justice was about to hit, fast, relentless, and impossible to ignore. The helicopter touched down with a gentle thud on the university's private helipad, its blades slowly slowing, slicing the crisp morning air into a deafening roar. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped onto solid ground. Beside her, Celeste Montgomery walked with a calm, commanding presence, as if the entire world bent to her will. Emma felt both nervous and exhilarated. Today, justice would be served. Inside Dean Caldwell's office, the atmosphere was as icy as ever. The dean was already meeting with her assistants when the sound of the helicopter echoed faintly through the walls. She looked up, her expression smug and self-assured. "Emma Bradley," she said, sneering even before she realized Emma was not alone. "You're late. Again, I presume?" Before Emma could speak, the office doors swung open with a force that silenced everyone. Celeste entered first, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The assistants instinctively straightened, recognizing the unmistakable aura of power emanating from her. Emma followed, her head high, heart pounding. Celeste's voice cut through the room with precision. "Dean Caldwell," she began, eyes locked on the woman who had destroyed Emma's scholarship. "I believe you remember Emma Bradley, the student you humiliated 3 days ago." The dean's smugness faltered. What are you doing here?" Celeste didn't answer immediately. She held up a tablet, swiping through images and documents that left the dean speechless. There were photos of Emma saving Celeste on the street, witness statements, and even a verified video that had been recorded by a passerby. "Do you recognize this?" Celeste asked softly. "This is proof of courage, and it also proves how utterly wrong your actions were." Emma stood quietly, letting Celeste speak. She had imagined this moment countless times, days of humiliation, hours of anxiety, and tears of frustration, but nothing could have prepared her for the calm, undeniable authority her rescuer exuded. "You see," Celeste continued, "the moment you destroyed her scholarship and attempted to humiliate her, you not only violated the university's code of conduct, but also committed a moral crime. Emma acted selflessly, risking her career for someone in need. And you, Dean Caldwell, tried to crush that bravery." The dean's face turned pale.
Her assistants exchanged nervous glances. The power dynamics in the room had shifted completely. Emma felt a strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. Her tormentor was finally facing consequences. Celeste didn't stop there. She pressed a button on the tablet, projecting a live social media feed across the office walls. Dozens of news outlets had already picked up Emma's story. Student saves stranger, expelled for courage. Billionaire steps in. Comments flooded in, praising Emma, condemning the dean, and calling for immediate action. The dean's composure shattered. This is impossible," she stammered. Celeste stepped closer, her gaze icy. "Impossible," she repeated. "No, the truth always finds its way. Today, Emma Bradley will have her scholarship restored, and measures will be taken to ensure that no student ever faces such humiliation again." Emma's knees nearly buckled from relief. She had endured so much, but now, with Celeste's support, the scales of justice were finally tipping in her favor. She felt a rush of validation, courage, and triumph. Celeste placed a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. "You did the right thing, Emma. Never forget that." The dean could only stare in stunned silence as the room absorbed the weight of what had just happened. Emma finally realized acts of courage and selflessness, no matter how small or inconvenient, could not be erased. And in that moment, as the sunlight streamed through the office windows, Emma understood that her life had been forever changed, not just by her actions, but by the unwavering truth that goodness and bravery always find their reward. The tension in Dean Caldwell's office had finally lifted, leaving behind stunned silence. Emma stood beside Celeste, feeling a mixture of disbelief, relief, and triumph. For the first time in days, she could breathe freely. The weight of humiliation, anxiety, and despair had been lifted. Her scholarship would be restored, her grades recognized, and most importantly, her courage validated. Celeste turned to her, her piercing eyes softening slightly. "Emma, what you did on that street, that moment of selflessness, that was a decision most people never make. And now, because of your bravery, your life is about to change in ways you could never imagine." Emma's mind raced. She'd always dreamed of being a nurse, of helping people the way her mother hadn't been able to receive help. But she never expected that saving a stranger would bring a billionaire into her life, changing everything she had known about opportunity, justice, and luck. Outside, the city bustled as usual, but Emma saw it differently now. Every act of kindness, every risk she had taken, had built the bridge to this moment. Celeste handed Emma a small card with her contact information. "Whenever you need guidance, support, or just someone to believe in you, call me. The world will notice your heart, Emma. Never doubt it." Emma clutched the card tightly, her eyes welling with tears, not of sorrow, but of hope. She had faced cruelty, injustice, and humiliation, yet she had emerged stronger, braver, and wiser. For the first time, she understood that doing the right thing matters more than immediate rewards, and that the universe sometimes has its own way of repaying courage. Celeste led her back to the helicopter. Emma stepped aboard, looking down at the campus one last time. The place where she had been humiliated, where her achievements had been dismissed, now felt smaller, insignificant, compared to the new world of possibilities opening before her. The helicopter lifted into the sky, carrying her away from past pain and toward a future she had never dared to imagine. As they soared above the city, Celeste spoke again. "Remember, Emma, kindness is strength. Bravery is rare, and the people who try to tear you down, they are the ones who will eventually be remembered for their cruelty, not their power." Emma nodded, heart racing. She realized that the events of the past few days were more than a story of humiliation and revenge. They were a lesson in courage, integrity, and the unexpected rewards of selflessness. The helicopter landed hours later at a new location, an opportunity Emma could only have dreamed of. Her journey was just beginning, but the fear, doubt, and humiliation she had endured were now behind her. She felt empowered, seen, and ready to face the world on her own terms. And to everyone watching her story unfold, remember, bravery and kindness have their own rewards. What would you have done if you were Emma? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you were inspired by Emma's courage and want to see more incredible stories of bravery, justice, and unexpected rewards, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, because these stories prove that doing the right thing can change your life in ways you never imagined.